Last year we made 6 multiplayer games in 3 months. Only to them, throw them all away. My name is Alan, one of the developers of Soulstone Survivors, and last year we found ourselves in a bit of a situation. We had just shipped Soulstone Survivors out of early access and it was time to start planning our next game, Rogue Soulstone, which had been on pause for 3 years. And yeah, I feel a bit ridiculous saying that out loud, but that is a story for another day. Rogue Soulstone is our next major project. It's going to be multiplayer. However, there's just a little problem. We don't really know how to make multiplayer games just yet. So before we jump straight into Rogue, we decided to try something. Let's make a few prototypes, quick and dirty stuff, and we can test and improve our networking and learn more about multiplayer development. Since we were working on new content for Soulstone Survivors, and still are by the way, I set off to do some exploration alone. I was making this in my spare time, so of course, I made sure to make all the mistakes possible along the way. As my first attempt, I had this epic idea of a vehicle-based Soulstone game. You would have something like a motorcycle or a mount that, when parked, would also serve as a turret. You would be able to man the turret and gun down hordes of enemies, navigating this open-world environment, hunting for massive titans. Yeah, that was me trying to think small. Check out this epic footage of how far I got into this prototype. Let's not count this one. Gladly, I noticed the error of my ways early on and decided to take a step back and be more grounded. I wanted to try something completely different, and this led me to my second prototype. Now you and your fellow Void Hunters are trying to settle the lands infested by the Void. You start with only a town center and slowly generate its population. You build farms to put your peasants to work, consuming population generating food instead. As food gets ready, your farms ship your food back to the town center, emptying their stocks and allowing more food to be generated. With food, you can build houses, which increase the population generation speed. As your city grows, you want to make the collection resource easier, so you build a silo that every now and then collects the food from all nearby farms, and a tavern that gathers your population in a similar manner, and you start to feel the flow of resources working. Suddenly, you gaze into the horizon and you see this cacophony of resources flowing, your city growing. And to be honest, I actually really like this one. However, it felt so much better as a single-player experience, something more relaxed, cozy even, that it was sort of the opposite of what we were looking for. So, let's not count this one either. So for my first prototype, multiplayer comes first, which is the whole point to begin with, and I wanted to make something that really incentivized players to play and be together. And after thinking for a bit, I thought of this. In this game, you and your friends play as a family, getting settled into a new neighborhood. You'll have to pay an increasing rent by the end of the day, which means you'll have to go to work and make some money. But life's not all about money, so you also need to keep your family happy. Maybe taking a stroll through the beach with your son, maybe buying your spouse some flowers. And as the day passes, your list of desires grows, your rent increases, and soon enough every second counts. Your family despairs as everyone wants something from someone. Time is running out, we're all off money, and where the hell is Timmy, that little brat? I need to give you roses, son. By now we were about a month in, with mostly just me using my spare time to make these prototypes. But since we had fun with the previous game, we wanted to try more ideas and different mechanics, involving more members of the team. We used the bones from the previous project to make a game where you and your friends are factory workers in Victorian England. You live in the factory quarters, so no longer need to pay rent, but work conditions are rough and you need to meet your quotas. The factory whistle marks the start of the day, and you have to get the factory ready. Bring coal to the steam engine, release the pressure valve, and get to work. First, you had to load the stations with raw materials, such as cotton and bobbins to make cotton bobbins. Then you'd either deliver these as finished products or use them to make more complex recipes, such as cloth. Meanwhile, I had to keep machines oiled, the steam machine fueled, stations stocked, and if someone wasn't doing their job, just slap them awake. The next day, new machines would arrive, and the workflow would be more and more chaotic with each passing day, until eventually it would be fire, as the lazy peasant you are. With a bit more experience under our belt, for the first time in this entire process we mobilized the entire team for a game jam week. We brainstormed together to come up with a bunch of game ideas and divided ourselves in 4 tiny teams to make 4 prototypes simultaneously. Our rules were: the games need to be in the Soulstone universe, they need to be multiplayer, and they need to be small and fast to develop. After all, we're still doing this to practice for a real game. For the first week of this game jam, we would focus entirely on those prototypes. Then, depending on how they went, we would continue iterating on top of them, or not, for a couple more weeks, a couple hours each day. Let me show you what we came up with. Our first game jam prototype was inspired mostly by Plants vs Zombies, a game that feels very nostalgic for us and we felt we could try something new with the formula. In our version, you would assemble a deck of Void Hunters and together with your friends, place them into a board that is constantly attacking a Lord of the Void. If the Lord of the Void attacks, you lose. Each Void Hunter would have unique properties, and based on their positions and what other hunters are in the board, they would perform special combos with some cool synergies. The core idea was bringing deck building elements and a strong synergy system into a sort of multiplayer synchronous deck builder, where you and your friends are trying to come up with a powerful build together. Our second game jam prototype was mostly inspired by Hotline Miami, another game we really love, and we thought we could try exploring some cool mechanics and some funny lore. The idea was that you and your friends are a Void Hunter cell in the capital city of the human realms, disrupting the illegal Soulstone trafficking scene, where people are consuming illegal Soulstone dust for the high, but getting corrupted in the process. Gameplay-wise, you would break into Soulstone cooking farms and decimate the dealers and their corrupted overlord, and as you progressed, you unlocked new weapons and spells to hunt down the big boss. The game would be fast-paced and play a lot with the ideas of this sort of warriors and wizards stopping drug-dealing gangsters with cool spells. Our third game jam prototype was inspired by games such as Worms and Gunbound, which I know sounds a bit weird, but hear me out. Here once again we were playing with the idea of defending a city against creatures of the void. This time around you would equip your Void Hunter with powerful heavy weapons to bombard and destroy the minions from afar. As the days progress, you would upgrade your gear and unlock synergies that you could explore with your friends. For example, someone might get an oil bomb projectile, while someone else would be able to set that area on fire to deal extra damage to enemies. Your team would be attacked by all sorts of creatures, so ground enemies, flying enemies, and you will need all sorts of weapons and combos to deal with the threat, or perish with the city. And for our final game jam prototype, we were inspired mostly by sort of a mix of old school RPGs, auto battlers, and Loop Hero. Here you played as a group of Void Hunters assigned to protect a human city against the inevitable attack from the Lords of the Void. You had to hunt the woods to root out corruption, loot gear to get stronger and fend off against an incursion from the minions of the Void. Your group had to be synchronized, ideally with some healers, tanks, and DPS to have enough sustain to be able to kill the powerful bosses. As the days progressed, enemies got stronger, new events had to be resolved, and in the end, the Lords of the Void would appear and challenge your group for a fight to the death. It was time to bring our experiment to an end. But what was the verdict? Would any of these games have a future, or would they just be a learning exercise for Rogue Soulstone, as we originally intended? Well, let's see. Our first prototype, where you played as a family, while it was quite fun to play together, it was a game that essentially would never support single player, and we felt it was getting old really fast. We had a few ideas on how to expand it, but always felt like it would never be anything more than a quick party game that could never be a game of its own. It was time to kill it. Our second prototype, the one with the factory workers, it was once again quite fun to engage with. The machines and the chaos and slapping your friend and rushing to get stuff done and the factory is now on fire. But it was content hell. We would be designing machines and levels and interactions probably for the next 5 years. We had to kill this one as well. Our third prototype, which was inspired by Plants vs Zombies, while we felt there was a cool idea in there somewhere, it just never felt right. We didn't have much time to develop it, but still, we could already see a lot of design problems, and trying to make it engaging and exciting felt nearly impossible. It had to go as well. Our fourth prototype, inspired by Hotline Miami, also felt a bit like that. The game was definitely fun to play, but it felt like we were just trying to shove multiplayer down the throat of the game. The super fast-paced combat and the brutal gameplay often came at odds with co-op multiplayer. And while we really liked the idea and theme, the game wanted to grow and definitely would not be quick to develop. It was time to put it to sleep. Our fifth prototype, inspired by Worms and Gunbound, I feel like it was the most unexpected of the bunch. It was a very simple game to develop and it felt like, in a way, just pure innocent fun. Aiming your shots was rewarding, the upgrades were a bit simple but something we could expand. But once again, the multiplayer aspect wasn't feeling great. The game felt too much like 4 single players playing together, and while we had some ideas to improve the feeling, it was starting to feel like an uphill battle. One that could be won for sure, but would lead to a game we're not even sure if anyone wants. Sleep well, sweet prince. Finally, for our 6th and final prototype, which was inspired by Loop Hero, despite the short development time, we really loved it. Even in its earliest forms, being the super simple and quick prototype, we had a lot of fun playing it. It felt rewarding to get stronger and destroy enemies, even though the combat is super simple and automatic. It led to a lot of funny moments where a boss would spawn and hunt someone down, and the others would try to help, but they would get ambushed by another boss that they forgot was there. We were discussing roles and builds and who would heal, who would walk together. There was this push and pull between playing alone to level up and get items faster, and getting together with the team to kill strong bosses to get better loot. And while all of this started as just an exercise to gain multiplayer experience, to test our networking code and find its weaknesses, by the end of it, we felt like we stumbled into something that could be really special. In the end, this little exercise led us to the beginning of our new game, Bay of the Soulstones, and really showed us the power of prototyping even when the goal is technical. We learned a lot about multiplayer development in this short period, much more than we ever would tackling a massive project like Rogue Soulstone from the get-go. It showed us how we can turn this massive problem into a bite-sized challenge, and even if we had decided to delete all prototypes, the experience we gained was invaluable. And now is where the real work begins. We have a lot more to talk about the game, but for today we just wanted to share with you a bit of this crazy journey we've been through so far. We'd also love to know what you think about the little games we came up with, and if you'd like to see more videos like this one where we talk about game development, our experiences, challenges, and the decisions of how we're working on our games, let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.